Welcome everyone back to Pommy and Oz. Hope we're all doing absolutely awesome. It's a wet and windy Melbourne, so I hope where you are in the country is a wee bit better. But we are straight on to the final day of the trade period. It was a hectic day, so if you are new around here, please drop a like, please drop a subscribe. The support that we've got throughout this process has been absolutely phenomenal, well on the way to 3K, and I can't thank you enough. And let's get straight into it. We've got a few beauties, really, haven't we? And this is the first one that came through. Pick 37 and a future fourth went to Essendon for Aaron Francis, and pick 42. Sydney probably get the backup for the McCartins in the interim, just to make sure they've got it. Francis, probably one of them players that didn't really set the world alight at Essendon, was steady when he did play. Essendon get a pick 42, which they did. 37, which they did end up using a bit later on to bring in something of themselves. But this was a fairly uncomplicated trade, really. Didn't cost much for Sydney, and Sydney will probably turn him into a superstar, won't they? I mean, Sydney have got an uncanny knack of doing things like that. Their system is incredibly good. I don't mind this deal, to be honest. I think that Sydney got the business done. And Sydney, you know, the wonderful thing about them in trade periods is they're just no nonsense. This is like the polar opposites of football clubs. At work. Sydney don't really talk much. You don't really hear about them. They just suddenly appear in a trade. Essendon, obviously one of the main features of trade period. We know Dodoro very well. I don't mind this trade. I think it's a fairly 50-50 deal. Essendon obviously turned it in. And what did Essendon turn it into? They got the weeds. I don't mind this deal, to be honest, right? Because I think Essendon have probably got turned that into a few picks where they have got Anthony Munkara, who I'm a big fan of. He may go in the top 40. I've got him going anywhere from that 40 to 50 mark. So he will be in that match area, which does make me think maybe that's what Essendon were looking for here. And they've got weeds. We know they did such a splendid job, Essendon, of turning Peter Wright into a real force in the AFL, taking out their BNF. And Weeds is one of them players that I think has real untapped potential. And with him being there, working alongside Peter Wright, you'd say that Essendon do probably want that extra tall there. I don't mind this deal, and I think he's going to be a really interesting one. There's a few key football. There's another key forward we're going to talk about in a minute that I think just needs a fresh opportunity. And it's a bit of a risk-free strategy for both parties. Pick 37. I don't think Essendon will say that that's two overs with what they've got back because, like we say, there is a potential to match after pick 40. Essendon go into the trade period as well with, you want to say the greatest hand, but 422 will get the job done. And then they've got a load of picks there should they need to match in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Decent deal. Melbourne, you know, get that pick 37, which, you know, gives them a second pick, 13 to 37 they've now got. So that's going to be an interesting thing of what they use that. Obviously, they're going to have to nail 13. But I don't mind this deal. And they worked very quickly to fix the depth hole. They took in Josh Schache for a future fourth. Now, I'd say that that is a huge net win for Melbourne, because I'd say Schache is, again, someone that probably just needs the time. The Doggies have gone out, and obviously with their father-sons, they've got a few key position players. Sam Darcy as well can also float through there and also do a bit of ruck tap work as well. So that's a huge, huge dub for the Doggies in the terms of that. It's probably unders for what he's worth, but they've already got the depth, and it's them future pick building things, isn't it? People forget that thirds and fourths don't look sexy on the balance sheet, but often these are the back end deals. Like every time we've done this, there's been a future fourth added as steak knife. So it gives them a bit of scope next year to maybe work something in the trades for the Doggies. But Doggies, do you know what I mean? Josh Schache, he hasn't set the world like that. They've got real good depth. Hugo Hagen, Darcy, like we say. They'll be quite happy with what's been developed there. And like you say, they get a future fourth back, which is the steak knives in many deals. And the Doggies were super active today as we go through it. So I don't mind what the Doggies did, because there is a trade that we're going to talk about a bit later that I actually think is a real smart play from the Doggies. And I'm very interested to see what they've got going on. But Josh Schache, instant replacement for Lederman in depth. And if they can untap his potential, like we say, that could be a real goer, because I just think he's a lot better than he's shown. And can Melbourne's system get there? We know that Ben Brown hasn't exactly set the world alight at Melbourne. Can they get Shaki firing is the big question. The big deal of the day, though, was Josh Dunkley and two future seconds went for pick 21, a future first, a second, and a future fourth. You see that fourth, he's always the steak knives. And Josh Dunkley finds a new home. His second trade request in 3 years now. Wanted Essendon. He's trumped up though, hasn't he? He's got to Brisbane. And the doggies here somehow have left the trade period with 11, 21, 39, and 69. Losing Dunkley is a huge loss to them. But I would say that they'll feel that not all hope is lost. I know that maybe some dog fans will feel a little bit disheartened, and that's fair enough. You don't want to lose your best players, but they're in some really good little areas. Do you know what I mean? Like where pick 11 is, you've got some decent players there. Hustwaite is there, Elijah Hewitt, who really could be a guy that is Dunkley-esque in the terms of he's very aggressive in what he does. And they've got the kind of system that could build him. They've got some very good players still as well. Dunkley's a loss, 100%, but don't mind, do you know what I mean, them future, that pick 21 gives them, again, another bite at that, like, top areas. And I don't mind it, do you know what I mean? Because, you know, there's players there that, you know, they could be looking at, do you know what I mean? Lockie Cohen, do you know what I mean? They could be hoping for someone to slip as well, because that is that happy place where someone will slip out of the first day, and they're going to be really there in the front of the queue. And they've got some decent Arsenal for a very strong draft class next year as well. Dunkley's a loss, though, and it's a huge addition. Brisbane have been very active, and you can see what Brisbane are doing. They're always the bridesmaid, never the bride. It's going to be an interesting year next year because they have gone hard this year with Ashcroft to come and Jasper Fletcher. They have done probably one of the best trade periods. But I think there's hope for the doggies. I know a lot of people are getting on their case. I don't mind what they've done. We had this three-way deal as well, which effectively, if you break it down, they lost Ollie Henry and gained Tom Mitchell and picked 25 Pies. Tom Mitchell obviously goes to the Pies. Cooper Stevens, a man that is very talented, hasn't quite set the world alight at Geelong, gets a crack at the whip at a young team in the Hawks with 41 and 50. And Ollie Henry found a home with his brother at Geelong. Collingwood, you would say, probably have won this trade just on face value, to be fair. Tom Mitchell coming in and 25 and just losing Ollie Henry will be a huge win for them in that aesthetic. Do you know what I mean? I don't think they'll look at that and be like, that's a big loss, because they've converted very well there. That's a good net gain. Tom Mitchell, yes, he hasn't got a lot of football ahead, but, you know, his clearance and his contested work stack up. A very good footballer. And when you combine it as well with young players coming through them ranks, like Finlay McRae working with Tom Mitchell is a huge plus point for Collingwood. Huge plus point. And I don't think it's talked about enough. They've got a lot of very young, talented players there. People talk about their old guard, but I like what Collingwood have done there. It's a smart little bit of business. I have taken the piss out of it a bit, saying it's not 2016, but I'm going to be honest here. This isn't for banter. This is a bit serious. And 25, you know, is a real nice little premium pick. There's some really tasty morsels there. And like we say, anything from that 18 to 25 range is a really good place when teams make mistakes, which we've seen, and buck the trend. Cooper Stevens, I think he needs a second opportunity. He's going to get opportunity at Hawks. And really, if you go back to his draft class, he had something about him. And if Sam Mitchell can unlock that for the Hawks, bully for them. 41 and 50 are going to be a bit speculative picks. Will they be going at the Box Hill area? Will they be looking at that avenue? We know they're very proactive in that avenue, so that could be something to look out for there. And Ollie Henry, Geelong have just taken the piss this trade period, haven't they? A nice third player there in that forward line for them. And you have no doubt that all three of them teams, Geelong will probably win that trade when it's all said and done in about 4 or 5 years, when Ollie Henry is like the premium third in the AFL. You can just see it, can't you? But do you know what I mean? Hawthorn probably will feel stiff there. I think they're stiff. I don't quite. They haven't really jettisoned an awful lot to be involved in that deal, to be fair. But it's going to be an interesting one. Do you know what I mean? Is what they gave up for that trade worth it? I don't know, but time will tell. But I do think that Collingwood and Geelong will be very happy with that bit of business. And if Cooper Stevens can meet his potential, that's a dub. That's going to be one of them ones that time will tell. Now, I really enjoyed this one from the Doggies. Future second and pick 30, which you're probably playing a bit of a premium because he's a ruck forward. But when you've lost Shaki, I don't mind Rory Lobb coming in. I think there is a lot more to Rory Lobb's game than meets the eye. And I am if I was at the kennel, I'd be very excited about this trade. I know it doesn't look exciting. And I know history says it's not exciting. But for me, I think there's something in Rory Lobb that needs untapping. And I look at the Doggies forward line and I say, he must be rubbing his hands, saying, you know what, I can make a difference because he's got some solid users kicking into him. And we've seen what Doggies can do when they get up and about with forwards. Josh Bruce, when he kicked like 9 that year and stuff, he's going to get the opportunity. And particularly working with someone like Sam Darcy, who I think will be a lot better than Rory Lobb, but playing that similar pinch hitting role in the forward line in the ruck. It's got someone to work with in training as the benchmark of AFL level. So I think that's an exciting deal. I like this deal. I really do. You may have paid a little bit overs, but I think you've got a very good footballer here and a guy that if they can take him under their wing and get that system, which is a beautiful system to be a forward, really. I don't think he yields enough goals, but they like getting it inside quickly. And that is where Rory Lobb should be a strength. So I don't mind this deal. I know some Doggies fans might be upset with their trade period. I have seen it, but I don't quite understand why you are. I think there is a little bit about you. 11, 21, 39 as well. There's some nice little picks there. Do you know what I mean? If you can get Elijah Hewitt, do you know what I mean? And then look elsewhere, that could be a huge dub for them. So that's going to be one that, if they draft well, could be tasty. And then we finish with this one. Jaeger found his home back in Perth. And a future fourth went to Lloyd Meek and a future second. Massive whole field for them. And I love Lloyd Meek. I'm a big fan of Meeky. Big boy, doesn't quite get the opportunities, really slots into what Hawthorn want. And I think that's a good get. Jaeger, few question marks with his injuries. Had a very good year at Hawks. Then the injury niggles started to appear here and there. Get a future second for him and Meek. I think that's a dub. And Fremantle get extras in that midfield, which allows them to do a lot of things. So I like this deal for both parties. No one here, I think, has won or lost dramatically. It makes sense. And Hawthorn have really gutted their list. It has to be said there. They're really going hard at it. 6, 24, 41, 48, 50, 52, 65 they've got left. They're going to get a very good player at pick 6. I mean, you'd imagine it's going to be Cam McKenzie, which, again, I think is going to be an upgrade on Jaeger. Very well balanced and a very solid player, and I think he'll relish having Sam Mitchell and co working through it. Lloyd Meek as well. He's very strong, and I think he's a guy that's going to really relish first-team opportunity. Jaeger, pairing him with that midfield, I think he's very, very tasty. And I think, family life comes into it, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? Perth boy, family's Perth. Makes sense for him. Surprised it wasn't GWS, though, because he spends a lot of time with Coggy. But I think that's going to be one of them trades that in 10 years' time we'll say, Jesus, that was fair, wasn't it? So I like that deal. And, future second in a strong draft class for Hawks as well to continue this micro or major rebuild. That's it then. I will be back. We'll be doing some in-depth play-by-plays of each club, what they lost, what they got in, and a little bit of a review and seeing if it's made them better. Does it change my opinion on them? Let me know in the comments. Are you happy with your trade period, first of all? And as always, thank you very much for all the love and support. You're all legends in my book. You make my day. Till next time, Pom out.